right, ready? Okay.
Yeah, go.
Carl, what brought you and your family to the Entiat Valley?
I was born here.
About the family.
Oh, the family?
Mm-hmm.
Land. It's funny though, it was 1908 when they moved here, and the home place up there already had apples planted on it when they moved in. So it was farm.
So it was farming?
Yes.
Okay. Where did your family come from?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
How did you and your family make a living over the years?
Farming. We raised apples and pears.
Who were your neighbors? Did you have close neighbors or faraway neighbors?
Oh, no, we had good neighbors. Wicks and Potters. Well, there were just two. Yeah, Wicks and Potters.
And the land that you farmed was in relationship to where you live now. Where was it?
It was around the house.
Around here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how many acres did you farm?
Well, it probably started out about 35 and ended up about 50. You keep expanding, and permanent sprinklers made it easier to irrigate it, and ended up about 50.
And how many acres do you have now?
Well, just this lot and the one next to us.
Okay, so
I've completely gotten out of the farming business.
Okay. You're retired?
Yes.
Semi-retired?
No, I'm retired.
Retired?
Everybody wants to know, don't you miss farming? It's like I escaped.
Yeah, I tell them if I had a thorn under my fingernail, if I pulled it out, I'd miss it too.
Yeah.
The hurting would stop.
In times past, what brought people together in the community?
The school. We didn't have television until late 50s, and the winter time, the farms weren't taking up so much time, and it was basketball. The whole town came to basketball games. It was just crowded. It was really rocking. It was something. So and then they'd have canasta parties after the basketball game.
Is this during the period of time when all the boys turned out for basketball?
Most of them, yeah.
What events or hardships do you remember? Fire, snow, windstorms, earthquakes?
Oh,
floods?
hailstorms. Because that would decimate our apple crop, and then you were in really short rations for that year. But you still had to take care of the orchard.
You didn't ever have fire down in your orchard?
Yes, a couple times. It burned right down around the green part of the orchard. We lost some trees around the edges, but it wasn't an economic impact at all. We didn't, one fire we lost a big barn and piles of bins, or apple boxes in those days. And that was an economic impact, but not serious.
Floods? No floods?
No, we've always been up away from the river. We've never had to deal. We've had some cloud bursts that ripped out our road to the upper canyon, or upper orchard several times. But same thing, it cost a few bucks to get a cat in and put it back, but it wasn't a big impact. We didn't lose any buildings or livestock or anything. So I'm waiting for that to happen again too, up that canyon, by the way.
Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. I can see Numeral Mountain out your window. Did you help put your class number on the mountain?
Yes. It's 1960. We put it up there. Trouble is, it keeps fading out, though. I think it's the angle or the location of it. First time we were cheap, and it was 1960, and you could still get World War II surplus. And we really got a hot deal on the black paint, and it just didn't last. But it's been repainted once since then, and it's fading again.
How did your family put food on the table? Did you can? Did you dry? How did you preserve your food? Did you just go to the store and shop?
They probably had one of the first freezers in town, and then later got a second one, and we ate a lot of venison. My father wouldn't poach a deer though; they were in season. But we had a lot of venison. We had elk. He was an avid hunter, and then she would can vegetables out of the yeah, homemade jams and canned vegetables and frozen meat. And well, we had cattle too. We ended up with about 50 head of cattle. So we would have yearling steers that would be, he would sell them, custom cut them, custom kill them rather, and hang them and skin them. And we'd usually get a half a beef every fall too. So yeah, we bought food at town, at the store, but they put up a lot of their own food. In the really early days, it was quite an ordeal to go to Wenatchee.
Yeah.
It would take you all day, and if it was in the winter, you didn't have electric heat or central heat at all, and you had to get home in spite of the foul weather before the pipes in your house froze so you could restoke the wood fire. Now, I was kind of small then, you know, I was 5 or 6 years old. I don't remember much about it, but I know that was a thing you had to get home.
I've heard people say, oh, well, I'm not really associated with the town of Entiat. I lived up the valley. Did you consider yourself part of Entiat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I walked to school, and about a mile. And the upriver savages they went to school with us. They were our friends, and their parents were longtime friends, you know. But they were kind of cliquey, and they had their own problems and associations and stuff. But we were Entiat. Well, my mom worked for. There used to be 3 packing plants in Entiat for apples, and Mom worked there every fall.
Can you tell us about somebody from your past, somebody that you remember? Albert Jones, John Brown?
I knew them both. They were interesting people. Albert Long was very interesting, had a lot of knowledge and a good memory. John Brown was a unique personality. I wouldn't say he was retarded, but he was limited, and he was a really sweetheart. He was a nice man. Same thing, I was a little guy when I first met him, and it was like the town marshal, Clarence Haynes. I was a little guy, he was a giant, and they were both big people. You know, I think Clarence really was a pretty big guy. John wasn't that tall, but he was broad, and it's your perspective. You know, when you're only 4 foot tall, why some of the people really look big. No, I knew both of them quite well. So at that time, Shorty was the mail carrier, I believe. At that time. And then his wife Mavis was the mail carrier. But he was an upriver savage. You know, we didn't chum around with him, but we knew him and interacted with him.
Okay, how about Albert Jones? Do you remember that name? He had a nickname.
No. His nephew Paul Jones was my dad's best friend, and Albert Jones years ago he wrote a book and decided he was an intellectual giant, and I don't know if he was or not. But one time out on the Olympic Peninsula, we went and found his home over there, and where he lived in Entiat was just a place he hung out at times. He had a real home over there, but I can still remember it. Took a while to find it. It was a big long walk up to it, and it was kind of jungle area. It was about to be overgrown, and he had so many papers and books in his house that you couldn't get in it. It was just stuffed full. So he was a unique personality too.
What parts of Entiat's past that no longer exist do you miss the most?
The old town. The second town, the one that the Rocky Reach Dam flooded. That was the center for everything. You know, the food store, we always had a barber shop. That's the one thing I hate about now is we don't have a damn barber shop. I would really like to be able to get a haircut without going clear to Wenatchee. Shoe store. Well, now, who fixed tenny runners? You know, you don't go to shoe stores. You go back down to Walmart and get a new pair and throw these away. But that was a big deal, was to get taps on your shoes. You know, the metal plate on the back of them. And you had a shoe store. Had a meat market, hardware store. You get pipes. It was about like Cooper's. You get pipes and you cut them and thread them for you. It was, the central business district and associated shops that were there. Of course, there were several taverns too. I was pretty young at the time, and I watched the drunks in awe. You know, they get to fighting on the sidewalk or something. You know, it would. Library. That's where I first discovered. I read all of the science fiction books in the high school library. And I was in the grade school when I discovered science fiction, and I had a special hall pass. So I wouldn't get thrown in jail by wandering around in the high school, and I'd go up to their library, and I read all of those. See, it was kind of off color to read science fiction in those days, you know, that you were intellectually crippled or something was wrong with you. But I read all of them, and then I discovered the one downtown. They were right by Risk Store. They had a library, and that's the thing I really enjoyed. And the high school library didn't rotate or get new books, but the one down there did. You couldn't read them all. They'd keep changing them on you. So that was kind of a breakthrough when I discovered the library down there. What else was down there? A couple nice little restaurants, family type restaurants. You know, we get a restaurant here now, comes and goes, but those were old establishments. I enjoyed that. Yeah, I think that's what I miss most about. But most things in this life, you can't be sure of anything. You know, the one thing you can be sure of is change. There will be change, and change is scary, and you won't resist it, and you don't like it. And that was one of the changes, is the town got flooded.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, you know, these young fellows here, you know, what's the town going to be like 50 years from now for them?
Well, we're getting so many housing developments. You know, if things hold up and the country doesn't unravel, why, I would guess you're just going to have a damn barber shop eventually. That would be nice.
Did your family, you said you had a barn that at one point. How have tools, equipment, vehicles, everything that kind of associated with farming, how did they change in your lifetime?
Oh, a lot. When I was a little guy, I remember being out in the orchard. I was too little to be anything more than to go out and see my father. He had an old clay-track crawler tractor, and he was pulling a great big chunk of iron boiler on a cable, and that was his trailer. And they called it a float. And I remember it was on a hill. I went out to see him, and he said, well, as long as you're here, we got to stop here, hold the brakes on the cap. So I got up in there, and I was trying to hold, oh God, my legs were shaking. I was getting tired. It was hard to hold the brakes, and with that float, I doubt if it would have went anywhere anyway. Didn't have wheels on it. And I can remember holding the brakes on that like the whole world was going to end if I didn't, you know. And then we got a gas wheel tractor. Oh yeah, it's changed a lot. And that helped a lot to have a wheel tractor. And diesel tractors are late 60s. That's a pretty recent event, but Used to be, there was probably 2 or 3 tractors a year in around Entiat or in the valley would burn. Most of them had the gas tank on top of the engine under the cowling, and gas is so volatile and it's so warm in here in the summer. Even a flooding carburetor, why you got a burning tractor on your hands? Well, most farmers don't keep their tractor engines that clean, and the guck gets to burning, and then you get the wiring harness on fire, and you burn the whole tractor down. Okay, it's an interesting thing. These young guys maybe haven't noticed or something, but since we switched to diesel, it's really unusual to even have one tractor fire in the summer. They don't make as much heat thanks to the muffler. Things aren't as hot. You don't have to check the battery water very often because it's not as hot, and you get very few fires. So there's been a lot of difference. Then it used to be all pocket high grass in the orchard, ragweed, orchard grass, and a lot of people kept a disc, and they would thrash it. And it was tough to pick, it was tough to spray, it was tough to do everything. And the disking is kind of before my time. But I remember the long grass, trying to move 20-foot sprinkler joints, and the long grass would just wear you down. And so the rotary mower was really a breakthrough. That really made a difference. And sprinklers. Then you didn't have real irrigation. All the rills in the orchard were all a bump for the tractor. And getting sprinkler irrigation and rotary mowers really made a difference on the orcharding. And speed sprayers. Used to be everybody had a great big tank and some old truck engine hooked to a giant pump, and geez, they'd hold 500-600 pounds of pressure of this big tank of spray they'd mixed. And they had a permanent system that when I had spigots around the orchard, and were hand spraying. That was a little before, I remember them, they were all sitting there, but they were unused. That was kind of before my time, though. A few of the farmers used them, but not very many in later years. But the speed sprayer really, plus you were mowing the orchard so you could get around. You didn't drive into holes and run over rocks. It was, I think the speed sprayer, the rotary mower, and probably sprinklers instead of rills really made the difference. That all kind of dates back to the early pioneers with the canals. We had water, and the PUD always kept us power, so we had pumps, and we were fortunate. It's a good place to grow apples. You get a freezing frost, or a wintertime freezing, goes 20 below zero and the wind starts blowing. In other areas, they kill the trees in the winter, especially young ones. We'll have some of that, but probably a lot less than they did. You get a pre-harvest windstorm. Everybody's crop goes on the ground, or a lot of it does. We'll have a little problem with that, but not devastating like other areas. So we get everything everybody else gets, but a lot less. We're kind of sheltered here. It's a good place to farm. It's a good place to live, too.
Okay, that was my last question. What do you appreciate?
Oh, I want to know about the irrigation.
You want to know about irrigation?
Yeah, exactly. The irrigation
Go
water.
for
Were you on a ditch, or did you have your own?
Yeah, it was a canal. It starts up here where MacArthur Fruit Company was. It was across the river, and they had a dam, a weir kind of across the river, and headworks were there. And it came down around by the main fire station, and it went through George Small's orchard, Bill Small now, and came down around the cliffs, and came down here, and it went way on the north end of town, and there was a spillway there that went down under the road by Greg Becker's house, and back to the Columbia. And it's always been there. Now our upper orchard always had to be pumped. because it's above the ditch. The lower orchard down here, you could gravity irrigate it, not on sprinklers, but you could easily gravity, and that was the plan. Most of the orchards, if you look, are below the irrigation canal,
Sure.
the old canal.
Sure.
And that's where our new pressurized pipeline is in that canal.
So when you went from the reel to the sprinkler heads, then you had to pump.
Had to have us, even over here where it was below the canal, yeah, we had a 3-horse pump there. You'd run about 20 sprinklers. Run them really good though. And that was, this is semi-arid climate here.
Yeah, did
You
you?
you gotta have water.
Sure. Did you run it? I mean, it was just about from the time you started until the apples were gone. You just about ran sprinklers every day.
Oh yeah,
And it's,
yeah. That's
12
why
hours.
That's why farmers can't take a vacation.
That's right.
They gotta change the ditches, or in my case, change the sprinklers.
Sure. Did you have a 12-hour set or a 24-hour set?
No, 24.
24.
Yeah, yeah. That was, yeah, it's real critical, you know, and it used to be with old aluminum lines that you moved, they ran 24/7. The sprinkler heads and the pipes and the gaskets, they run 24/7, so there's a lot of wear. You know, a couple of years, why Reed Pump in Wenatchee would have a deal. In wintertime, when their crews weren't that busy, why you'd take all your sprinkler heads in and they would repair them. They'd tear them all down, new gaskets, new pivots, new springs, new everything,
Sure.
just for the cost of the materials. Sure. And but when we went to permanent sprinklers, that individual sprinkler head didn't run 24/7. It just ran for 24 hours once a week. So they didn't wear out.
Sure.
Or not very often, or very quick.
Sure.
So, and we've always had relatively clean water too. After the big 1972 fire, there was so much silt coming down the Entiat Valley that the swivel in a rainbird impact head would wear out. It's a round shaft with a flare end on it. It would start wearing that wear end from the rotation and the silt and the grinding compound in there. And one season it would wear all your sprinkler heads out. We had a 30-horse turbine pump up there, and the motor hooked up to the turbine stages was a 1-inch stainless steel shaft. One season it was laid down just like a piano leg, where it went through the packing gland. And the blades on the turbines were wearing out too. You know, it was a real nightmare. Well, how many years is it going to take before the whole valley burned, before you get rid of all that silt? It's going to be a while.
Sure.
It's going to be years, and you're going to have big rainstorms up the valley, and there's going to be more mud in the river and more silt in the river. And that's when Dad and Larry Vredenberg and Bob Todd, Robert Todd, they got together and started hustling the state and anybody that had talked to them, and they put in this pressurized system in the pump house down by the Columbia River and started pumping clean water. It was all over that silt after that big fire.
Sure.
That was a heck of a project. And as I remember at that time, the Washington State Environmental Protection Agency really, we considered them scum of the earth because they were against everything. And I remember they came forward on that and didn't loan them money, they granted them a big bag of money for the project. Everybody thought that was great, to put in a pressurized system. And it really was. Everybody below the canal had pressurized water all of a sudden instead of a weir and just what they could get. And it was clean water, relatively clean. The Columbia is way cleaner than springtime flood in the Entiat. And no little kids are going to be floating face down the canal either. There was historically there was you just couldn't keep the little guys. And I was one of them.
Yeah.
You know, you just couldn't keep them out of that canal, and then they drowned one occasionally. That hasn't happened either. The old open canal, it was concrete lined, just mortared. It held pretty good, but occasionally you get a crack in it and then a gopher run, and you'd get the whole side blow out of a canal, and you'd lose a whole hunk of real estate and a house, you know. And now that could happen again if you blew the pipe catastrophically, but it hasn't. So, no, it's been quite an evolution. We used to know everybody up the valley and around town. That's why I mentioned that the Upper Valley Savages were kind of cliquey, you know, they had their own groups and stuff. Well, now that's kind of unraveled because everybody up the valley is new, and nobody knows anybody, hardly, except in close neighbors. I think we've lost something of the community spirit by having so many new people move in, but that's a strength also.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Okay. That's everything.